Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. On Tuesday, the Prime Minister, Manuel Valls, talking about a cultural, ethnic and territorial apartheid in France in the wake of those terror attacks in the Paris area. A lot of soul-searching regarding those who weren't in the spirit of that national unity call, and also asking questions about the three attackers who are all French citizens born here in France. With us to talk about it, former MP and Socialist Minister Jean-Louis Bianco, who chairs the Observatory of Secularism in France. Also with us, Grégory Bectari, who teaches English at a junior high school in the working class northern suburbs of Paris. Sitting by his side, Nancy Green, historian. Her latest book, The Other Americans in Paris, Businessmen, Countesses, Wayward Youth. And we're also with Léo Sévillard, rapper and hip-hop artist. Léo, maybe we can listen a little bit to one of your latest tracks.
Oh. Je lâche des grands sourires à la Eddie Murphy. Oh. J'ai les mains sales mais je prie sur le parvis. Je suis qu'à moitié dans le digne, je lève le voile sur leur mytho El Niño. Petit prince Hakim de Paris. Oh. Je lâche des grands sourires à la Eddie Murphy.
Saying that yes, I'm different. Yes, I smile, but behind my smile there is also knowledge that maybe for some of you guys, well, not you, but in general, there is racism, there is some problems in society.
In that regards, do you think the last 2 weeks are going to help stop some of that racism, or do you think it's going to widen the gap?
No, it won't help to stop the racism, but maybe it will help the whole society to face it. Like to say that, yes, we are all here, in some way, racist. We have some problems with the difference. Even for example, I have a really a problem with the words banlieue. Like when you try to understand the word, the word banlieue, just by the name, you put the people who live there in the suburbs out. Ban, lieu de ban, yani.
They're put out. Nancy
just
Green?
the words.
Yeah,
put the words, the people out.
And it has become a term of stigmatization,
yeah.
and it doesn't make sense because it is a general term that should talk about the surrounding areas of
yeah.
the city, even within the banlieue. And friends who live in the banlieue say, well, that's not our banlieue, and there is a great mixity. I forget if that's really the term in English, but there's great diversity also within the banlieue of French-born, French citizens, immigrants of a variety of places. And I think that one of the things that is a problem for French, even studying French history, is there isn't enough recognition of the ways in which cultural, different forms of religious diversity have made France and need to be recognized as such, as opposed to being stigmatized.
Nancy Green, it's a two-way street. On the one hand, there's the argument, and the government's talking about it, that this hasn't been addressed enough in the classroom, that there hasn't been enough of a top-down approach to this. But there's also been criticism that in a lot of these working-class suburbs, people don't talk about the past. They don't talk about religion at home. It never gets talked about, with the problem being that as a result, there are all these problems that ensue in the case of people who feel more alienated than they should.
But for the last century and a half, if we just look at contemporary immigration, for example, there have been groups, Jews who came to France, Catholics who came from Italy and Poland, who were stigmatized when they came and who were considered very different than they were Catholic. So I think that it's a construction, the way in which difference is used is more of the problem than the difference itself. And the difference really has helped create France. I mean, there has just been a wide variety of people who have come to France and of different religions, of different backgrounds, and that has created the France that's very rich and very diverse today. But I think there needs to be greater recognition of that in the schools, in the school system. Certainly to have general values and civics classes are important, and that I think has always been what the French Republican model has been about. But nowadays it's maybe not enough. And I mean, and there has to be a recognition that in addition to, I don't think people have just single identities. In addition to an identity of France, people also have differences they could have that I think also need to be recognized. I think that would help also incorporate people by recognizing those differences.
Okay, Rebecca, you're telling us that one of your parents is Algerian.
Yes.
The War of Independence there, still a bit of a taboo subject in this country. In that regards, we know a few years back there was a football match where the president got up and left because people booed the national anthem and French people waving Algerian flags. This sort of ambivalence or this feeling of alienation and sometimes even hostility expressed.
Yeah, maybe, but I think that's what they're expressing in that kind of situation is. I mean, I've never heard in the areas where I work, people saying, we are not French, we don't want your French culture. But I think that what they express in that kind of situation is more that we don't want to be humiliated, we don't want to be discriminated against, and we want equal rights. And the point is that we're not there now. And when I heard what you said, I thought that in the States, for instance, you have cultural studies, you have Black studies, Latino studies. That kind of things don't exist in France. So I think that could be discussed. But also what should be discussed is very concrete measures. For instance, if you talk about the banlieue, about racial profiling, about police brutality, which do exist in that kind of places and make things worse.
Can the state continue to ignore diversity? Just one comment from our friend Thierry Lévesque there on Facebook. It's an irrelevant point to see these attacks as a result of social problems. 25% to half of the 1,200 French jihadists are non-Muslims, middle class, not living in those working class suburbs. He says, this issue of racial profiling or not, and this issue of recognizing, France says that it recognizes diversity, but at the same time, this whole concept of secularism means that the state must be blind and that all of its citizens are the same.
No, it's a wrong conception of secularism. Secularism means that you are different and you are free of being different, of believing, having a religion or not having a religion, of changing your religion, which is not always allowed in many countries all over the world. But I totally share the view expressed by Nancy. And the President François Hollande made a speech about immigration as building the history of France. And we, in the Observatory, we propose that a work inside the education should be done to recognize, to let know to every pupil, every student, where France does come from. And France comes from a lot of apports, as you said, coming from different parts of not only of Europe, but of the world. And the French identity is the result of all this history. And we have to express that very clearly in what is called the récit national, the national telling. And we must say, explain, let know what is the history of building France. You know, you mentioned the history. My father was Italian. I don't want to make any comparison with anti-Semitism, but there had been in Nizza some pogroms of Italians with 50 dead people at the beginning of the last century. So this history belongs to the history of France.
The French president, it's not, we're talking about diversity, we're obviously also talking about religion. And the French president, in his remarks he made at the Sorbonne this Wednesday, saying there should be a secular teaching of the religious fact, I suppose is the way to translate it, le fait religieux.
That's what we propose, you know, because you can't leave pupils or children, students, to have only the explanation through their religion. You have this is the French Republic. You have to have
so in other words, you're suggesting
information with context, with scientific data, with historical data, saying this is the history, these are the building of religion, which means laïc secularism, not propaganda for Catholic or for Jewish or for Muslims. This is very important that the École Publique gives the tools for everybody to understand what is the history of religion, for instance.
which is the case in Britain, where you have religious instruction. So you're
Yes, but
saying that France should be
we
the
don't
same?
mean religious instructions through priests or rabbis.
No.
Religious instructions through teachers who are historians or philosophers or sociologists.
Nancy Green?
Yeah, I mean, so there is a form of teaching about religions that's possible in history classes, geography classes. That
And it's
is-
done, I believe, what, in 7th grade, and 12, 13-year-olds gets a bit of teaching on religion.
Yes, they do. They already do. But maybe this could be improved. But I'm not sure that's the bigger problem that we're facing here. It's not just a matter of ignorance or there are structural problems, serious issues that need to be addressed and which are not addressed today. And I think it's the bigger problem.
Leo Sevillol, when you think back to those riots in the working class suburbs that took place 9 years ago now, have things improved or gotten worse?
I think they got a bit worse, I guess. Like we are here today, so it didn't work. It didn't work at all. That's why we're here. I don't know what else to say, actually, but...
Unemployment has increased.
Of course.
I mean, and that's
Yes.
very basic. And I think that the fact of unemployment and discrimination, I mean, and the two have gone hand in hand. A little less, the fewer jobs there are, the harder it is for kids from disadvantaged backgrounds to get jobs, or even those with diplomas. So this has become a real structural problem. And that's when I think...
Also Islamophobia, which raises
Yes.
the issue of dignity for Muslim people in France today, which is not being addressed at all.
The German chancellor was very quick to react last week after there were those big anti-Islam marches saying Islam is part of Germany. Do you think the French president should have been quicker off the mark 2 weeks ago? We remember after the September 11th attacks, one of the very first things George W. Bush did was visit a mosque.
I don't know whether he had to be quick or not quick, but what Angela Merkel says is very right, and we said the same thing in France. I heard that from the Prime Minister or from the President, but I wanted to add something, not diminishing the problems. For instance, you mentioned, what gives me a little hope, because I'm a realistic man, is what happened during this march on Sunday. Because, you know, you had, I am Charlie, I am Jewish, I am Muslim, I'm atheistic, I'm French. This is a model of what we should do, but millions of people said that this day. It's far from coming from this dream, from this hope to reality, but it did exist, and I didn't expect that there was a recognition of the diversity of France, which is, for me, part of secularism.
All right. Did you see it that way? Was that your reading of the big march?
There were humanistic values expressed in this demonstration, and that was good. But what I fear that might happen later is that nothing serious be done for the problems I just mentioned. And also, I feel that we may have something like a patriotic act.
Patriot Act.
Patriot Act, yes, in France.
We will have it. I'm confident.
Not yet. I hope we won't. So yes, I feel that this, hope and these humanistic values be.
All right,
yes.
Let's look at a few of the political reactions. First of all, to Manuel Valls' statement about a cultural, ethnic, and territorial apartheid. Opposition lawmakers accusing the government of only waking up now to the problem.
Let's also remember how important it is to take up the battle for secularism again. A battle which, because of weakness or carelessness, we have abandoned for too long. The principles of secularism are too often flouted, but we know that it's divisive sentiments which benefit from that.
It's extraordinary in the past 15 days the Socialist Party has suddenly opened their eyes like a newborn baby.
We have often raised the alarm about this situation, about this angelism, this naivety, about certain neighborhoods of our republic. Now it's time to act.
All right. Act in what way, I suppose, is one of the questions. One of the senior members of the Conservative opposition, by the way, saying one of the measures that could be implemented, a concrete one, to get these Republican values instilled in everyone, is the restoration of military service in France.
My idea is that an entire age group should do at least 3 months of military service, which could be extended, so that we can reaffirm a few ideas in their minds, civic values of course, but also the link between the army, the nation and the republic, and the idea that we also owe something to our country, rights and duties.
Jean-Louis Bianco, restore military service, where everybody's equal before...
I think it's simply not feasible, but what has to be done and can be done. It's civic service, which does exist, but on a very narrow basis. I think, idealistic, all young people should have the opportunity or even the duty of giving some time for humanitarian reasons, for environment reasons, so that they have the feeling of being part of the community because they bring something.
But those who are nostalgic for military service say this was the one place where you had people from all walks of life
in
together
civic service
in
you have the same without having a military duty. And you have the same not to prepare defense or to prepare to become a soldier, but to make things better for life of citizens. So you have the same result of mixing people, of knowing each other's, and the accomplishment of a duty for the country. So I think it's excellent and it should be extended. The President of the Republic seems to go in that direction. But you don't need military service to do that. You have civic service.
Civic service, and it would include women.
Including women, yes.
Leo Sévillol, would you agree?
Yeah, I do agree with Mr. Bianco. Military service is like going back in old days for me, the oldies, like way back.
But to do civic service would be a good idea. The values of the Republic, do they need to be instilled in people?
Well, it depends what you call the values of Republic. If you're talking about, for instance, equality, yes, of course. And also, when I talk about equality, is both social equality and also equality concerning people from different origins, against discrimination and so on. But I don't know what kind of things do you think about when you say they have to be instilled?
Well, what Jean-Louis Bianco was mentioning, that by doing 3 months, what is it, 3 months? Or?
Can mean 3 or 6 months. You know, the problem is not the time. The problem is the principle and the fact that people do that. But I agree with you. I don't understand exactly what you were meaning by instilling values. Of course, you have to explain that, to express that, but you have to practice that. And this is the problem. The problem is you cannot be speaking of equality, fraternity, and freedom if you don't give equality. This is the key issue.
Exactly, and we have situations of double standards today in France. And I think it would be a symbolic measure, but I think we need more concrete and stronger measures. I mean, if equality is something you have to practice, well, we need to, I'm sorry, I'm repeating this, but we need to tackle the problems of job opportunities for people who come from the banlieue, for instance. And also, we need to tackle the problem of bad housing conditions, the problem of racism also, which is the contrary of equality in the French society. And that's really what the pupils I'm teaching are expecting now. I think much more than the civic service.
They're looking for opportunities. And how do you see in the area where you live, politically, how it's going to evolve? Everybody's watching here the rise of the far-right National Front. Is that going to continue?
I don't understand exactly what you mean.
Do you see the rise of the far-right continuing in France?
I think that, yes, if we don't tackle these social issues, yes, Marine Le Pen Marine Le Pen's influence may go on growing in France.
Nancy Green?
I hate to be so pessimistic, and I think that it is up to the current government to show forceful actions so that and measures that are against discrimination, that can help get people back to work, perhaps a civic service, something that get people together. The other thing that was the great mixer was also industrial employment. Forms of employment used to be places where people from different backgrounds met. With deindustrialization, other forms of problems on the job market, there are fewer places. So how to instill these ideas of freedom, equality, and fraternity, where and how, has become a real issue. But I think that that's key in order to block the far right.
Can I add something? Just want to add a bit of hope. Like, just here we have the example of someone your dad is from Algeria.
Yes.
And you teaching English now.
Sure.
In French. So, there is some hope.
Oh, well, and the statistics show, that the forms of mobility, of integration are really much greater than the small number of terrorists who exist.
Yes.
Well, I have hope, but I don't think I'm really representative of what's happening for young people now. I think the situation has worsened.
You think so?
Yes, I do. I'm working there.
So what's the message you convey to your pupils then in that case?
Go on working, because if you don't, you won't get anywhere, of course. But also, yes, fight for equality. This very important value of our republic.
All right, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank Grégory Bectari. I want to thank Nancy Green, Jean-Louis Bianco, and Léo Sévillol. Thank you for joining us. Stay with us because our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to James Creedy.
Good evening, Francois. So looking at the topic of your debate this evening, it is generating a lot of comment on French media and social media. Valls vowing to tackle the French apartheid. Now, for Le Monde, this is indeed the idea of ethnic ghettos is a political and intellectual taboo in France. And in speaking about this social and ethnic apartheid, it is a real break with the past. That is initial analysis from Le Monde.fr. The Courrier International website has been looking at international reactions and from the English-speaking press. For example, the Financial Times, who say it is a real change of tone, and that a part of what the government needs to accomplish to respond to these attacks by Islamists born in France. For the New York Times, they also say that it is important to pay attention to the underlying social and cultural issues. So pretty much positive reaction in the English-speaking press. You also have reaction from the German daily, the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, who say that Valls deserves respect for what he said, and that too often French politicians seek refuge in illusions. Now, meanwhile, amongst French politicians, there has been a degree of criticism. You can see on the political right and far right in particular, the French media here are picking up on comments made on social media that are critical of Manuel Valls' remarks. For example, one of the senior members of the UMP party, Laurent Wauquiez, says that Manuel Valls is demonstrating a culture of excusing the left, or that the left
is laying a guilt trip on the French.
Exactly, that this is a sort of being overly apologetic for
Hashtag apartheid.
Hashtag apartheid, indeed. And this is making the French people feel guilty for the problems that have emerged, when in fact it is, I suppose that the underlying idea there is that they are responsible, these individuals, for their behaviour, and it can't be blamed on any sort of social or ethnic apartheid. So there you go, Francois. It is a pretty divisive issue in the French, amongst the French political class, and a lot of reaction in the French and foreign media to this particular topic.
All right, many thanks, James Creedon. I want to thank once again our panel for joining us. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.